So welcome everyone. Whilst more people are joining us, I'm pleased to welcome you all to our January Liverpool Dementia and Aging Research Forum, the first one of 2024. And it's a pleasure to actually welcome two local speakers from Liverpool that I know very well and are doing a fantastic job looking at music and singing and dancing interventions for people living with dementia and their family carers. So today we'll be joined by Dr. Megan Polden, who is an NIHR and Alzheimer's Society postdoctoral research fellow. And her fellowship is looking at singing and dancing interventions, two different ones, and she'll be going into that. And we are also joined by Kym Ward, who has been running singing and dancing groups for the Brain Charity as a coordinator for the past few years, really. I think 5 years or plus, but Kym will know exactly how long she's been doing this for. So as always, we're also on social media whilst we're doing this webinar. So if you want to engage with us on social media, just please feel free to use the hashtag Liverpool Dementia. And throughout, please feel free to drop any comments, questions, queries, etc. in the chat function. We will be picking them up after both Megan and Kym will have given their webinar talk, and then we'll have a little Q&A about things. So whilst we're still letting people in, and Megan is very helpful with this, I think it's over to you, Megan, to start, okay? And then I'll let people in.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for having me. So as Clarissa said, I'm going to be talking today about music and singing interventions for people living with dementia, and specifically about the current work that we are working on that's funded by the NIHR, which is working with two local charities, the Brain Charity, and we've got Kym here today who's going to be talking about the intervention that they've developed, and then also be talking about the other charity that we're working with as well, called Lyrics and Lunch, which is a Lancaster-based charity. So I'll be going into details about some of the current research that we're working on with that as well today. There we go. So I first just wanted to talk about the ways in which music can kind of help everybody's health and well-being, and some of the reasons behind why music might have some of these effects. So I've put here 6 ways in which music can help people's health and well-being. And some of you might be able to kind of relate to how some of these ways that music's maybe helped you with your mood and stress and levels and things like that as well in your life. So one of the ways is that it can help stress reduction. So listening to music, especially calming music, can help reduce stress levels by lowering cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And music has the ability to relax the mind and body and reduce feelings of anxiety. Music has also been found to help improve people's mood. The music can have a powerful effect on people's emotions, and upbeat tunes can help enhance people's mood and create a positive atmosphere. And it can also help trigger the release of certain neurotransmitters like dopamine, which is known as like a feel-good chemical in the brain. So music has also been linked to having cognitive benefits. So it's been linked to improved cognition and also enhanced memory and increased attention span as well. And also learning to play a musical instrument in kind of early and later life has also been improved to cognitive abilities as well. So music also has quite a strong link to people's memories, and using music to help promote different memories and elicit different emotions that are linked to those memories as well can be really useful. And that's particularly something that's quite useful for people with living with dementia. And then music has also been found to help physical rehabilitation as well. So music therapy is often integrated into physical rehabilitation programs, and it can help enhance motor skills, coordination, and rhythmic auditory stimulation through music can help individuals with motor disorders improve their movements. And it can help with balance and rhythm of doing those different physical rehabilitation movements. And can also help with pain management. It's been linked to pain management in various medical settings. Can help distract individuals from pain and discomfort and different things like that. And then it's also been linked to improve sleep quality using calming music and things like that can promote relaxation, so linking to kind of the stress reduction and improvement in mood as well. So it's clear that music can have many positive effects on everyone's kind of health and well-being in many different forms, and music can be particularly beneficial for people living with dementia. So dementia leads to deterioration in cognitive functioning, including language, learning, and memory, and it's not a part of normal aging. So these cognitive deteriorations have significant impacts on people living with dementia, their quality of life, and also their ability to perform everyday tasks, such as preparing a hot meal, getting dressed, managing medication and finances. And the effects of dementia is not only limited to cognitive functioning, but it also can lead to behavioural and psychological changes, including things like depression, anxiety, agitation, and maybe aggression as well. And there are pharmacological approaches that are used to help manage some of the cognitive symptoms and also some of the behavioural symptoms for people living with dementia. However, sometimes this comes with quite limited success for some people. Also, these pharmacological interventions are usually accompanied and sometimes accompanied by multiple negative side effects. And this can include things like worsening cognition. They've sometimes been linked to a lower quality of life and also potentially could lead to a increased risk of mortality. So due to these negative side effects that often accompany pharmacological interventions, there is a real need for non-pharmacological interventions, such as music interventions, to help reduce and manage behavioural symptoms for people living with dementia. So there are many different forms of music-based interventions, and these can range from more passive types of music interventions, which might include things like music listening and having music playing in the background during different activities. And then it can range to more active engagement music interventions. And this could be things like learning to play an instrument, more engagement in terms of singing interventions and group singing as well. So there's a range of different types of music interventions. And singing in particular has been shown to demonstrate quite a lot of value in the realm of different types of music interventions. There's also been some research to show that depending on the stage of dementia, different types can be more beneficial at different stages. So, for example, research has indicated that maybe more passive music listening is more beneficial for people with advanced dementia, where that active engagement may be more challenging. Whereas in more early and moderate stages of dementia, having more active engagement, music therapy, such as singing interventions, which gets people involved a bit more, can yield more benefits for people living with dementia. And music therapy and singing interventions have been shown to improve mood, regulate emotions, and relieve stress for people living with dementia. And it's also been found that when people living with dementia attend with their carers, that it can improve the relationship between the person living with dementia and the carer, and also ease carer burden when they attend these sessions together. And then music therapy as well has also been linked to reduced levels of agitation in people with dementia. And this can lead to a reduction for the need of antipsychotic medication in 67% of people living with dementia. So I just want to talk about kind of why it is that singing may have these effects. So singing engages and activates the brain, and this mental stimulation can lead to improvements in cognitive functioning. So singing combines language, music, and instinctive human behavior to enhance neurological stimulation in the brain. So singing has been linked to improved memory, cognition, and language abilities, as it stimulates brain pathways other than what we would normally just use in just plain speech. Singing also involves listening to oneself and others, and contributing to the development of a variety of auditory processing skills. It can also help in that sense as well. And then singing is also linked to the release of endorphins, which are hormones that contribute to feelings of happiness and pleasure. And then when singing is done in a group setting, it can also help foster social connections and bonding as well when done in groups. So the majority of previous research that has looked at music and singing interventions have largely focused on the singing element itself, and not a lot of the other social elements that may go along with some of these groups provide. So there's many other types of different things that people will get from going out to do group singing interventions, in terms of a social element, bonding with carers and things like that as well. And that's something that's really quite important for the research to be able to focus on that as well as the impacts of the singing itself. So in addition to singing, incorporating physical movements and dance elements can also lead to additional benefits for people living with dementia. So often following a diagnosis of dementia, people's physical activity levels tend to decrease, leading to reductions in mobility, reductions in strength, and also potential difficulties with balance. So dance interventions have been shown to have physical and psychological benefits for people living with dementia. And this can be by improving cognition, levels of agitation, and then it can also extend to improving things like walking speed, grip strength, and balance as well. And interventions that combine physical aspects alongside cognitive stimulation may lead to even more benefits for people living with dementia. And there's evidence that suggests having these multi-domain interventions can lead more benefits for people living with dementia. So having intervention that maybe doesn't just focus on the cognitive aspects, but also focuses on the cognitive stimulation as well as physical elements being incorporated into it as well. And then maybe also incorporating some social elements, and looking at all of these things together can really yield more benefits for people living with dementia. So previously, a lot of the research is focused on the benefits of singing and music interventions, specifically for people with dementia, which is really important. However, it's also really important to consider the impacts that these and the benefits of these singing and music interventions for carers, and specifically unpaid carers. So the majority of people living with dementia will live at home and they're often cared for and supported by their friends and family. Family carers are a strong factor leading to more positive outcomes for people living with dementia, and also can reduce and delay the need for residential care. So it can be hugely rewarding and fulfilling caring for a family member living with dementia. However, it can also be incredibly challenging and can have negative impacts on carers' mental and physical health and also their quality of life. So due to this, there is a strong need for interventions such as singing therapy and singing interventions to help promote well-being among unpaid carers as well. So singing interventions have been found to improve the relationships between the person living with dementia and their carer when they're attended together. And it's important to remember that the challenges of dementia are often not limited to the person living with dementia, and that relatives, carers, friends are often profoundly impacted as well. And therefore, these services, we need to look at how these services can kind of benefit both people living with dementia and their carers. So another important factor to consider when looking at support services, and specifically music interventions and singing support services, is barriers that people may encounter when trying to access these services. So specifically in our research, this is something that we are wanting to focus on, that I'll go into a bit more detail later on. But it's really important to be able to highlight the importance of these singing interventions and music interventions and the benefits that they might be able to have for people living with dementia. But unless people are able to access these singing support services and they're able to be made kind of widely available and accessible, people just won't be able to yield those benefits from them. So there might be potential barriers that may stop people from being able to access these services, and they can be things such as travel. It might be increased reliance on carers. This could be paid or unpaid carers. There may be other associated costs as well that could impact their access. And accessing services after a diagnosis can be difficult for people living with dementia. So it's really important for us to understand these potential barriers to accessing these services in order to be able to make them as accessible and easy to access as possible for both people living with dementia and also their carers as well. So I'm now just going to hand over to Kym, who is going to talk about how the Music Makes Us session that's been developed by the Brain Charity, kind of the ins and outs of the service. So I'm going to hand over to Kym.
Thanks very much, Megan. That's lovely. Thanks for the invite as well to present today, Clarissa. So yeah, as Megan said, we've been working together, which I'll go into in a little while, on kind of doing a bit of research work around Music Makes Us. So Music Makes Us is a free music-based therapy for people living with dementia. It's run by the Brain Charity. I don't know how many of you might be based in Liverpool or not, but the Brain Charity is kind of located here, although we're a UK-wide charity. And we don't just kind of offer support and services to people living with dementia. We offer that support to anybody with a neurological condition. So that's quite a wide remit. There are over 600 neurological conditions. Yes, so we're offering practical help to people, which could be, help to kind of get different facilities in your house, like a new shower, things like this, if you've suffered a stroke and you've got mobility issues, or maybe you're a carer and you need to kind of put some benefits in place for the person that you're caring for. We offer emotional support, so we have a counselling service for people. We have got both group counselling in person, which is really nice in the Brain Charity, and then we've got online counselling services as well. And we also offer a lot of social activities, so throughout the year, which range from kind of poetry competitions to bocce to our new gym facility at the Brain Charity, which people are kind of accessing now. I could go on for a long time, but I'm going to concentrate. So the service that we are talking about today, it started in 2018, late 2018, where obviously I've just seen a question in the chat, and I will get back to you, Maxine, after the session. I'll just type it back in the answer. But yes, so yeah, we started in 2018, and obviously the world was very different then. And we were running singing and speech and language sessions. So the innovation was to couple up really speech and language, which is traditionally really hard to get access to, and singing combined. And we were coupling up dance and physiotherapy combined. We were offering these sessions in blocks of 12. So that means 12 weeks in a row, because we had understood from kind of doing our research that if people engage in a therapy for kind of 12 weeks at a time, then they're more likely to kind of see changes. And we were running these sessions all the way around Merseyside, Greater Merseyside, really. And we were running them all the way up to January this year. So, and that's kind of when our funding ended, unfortunately. But that is, as Clarissa mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, a good 5 years worth of kind of offers. Obviously, in the middle of that, it was broken by kind of lockdowns, pandemics, COVID. Megan, could we move on to the next slide, please? Thanks. So just to kind of speak a little bit about the reasoning behind the workshops. So as Megan mentioned, people who are living with dementia, it's quite important to start engaging in different kinds of activity at the beginning of that dementia journey, because that's going to give the most benefit later on. And dance is a wonderful way to kind of, I'm just going to say it, smuggle in physiotherapy to people's daily lives. As we'll kind of see in a bit, for people who are really not too keen on exercising, dance just provides that kind of absolute energy burst and joy, which would get you over the line doing some exercises where you might not do it in and of yourself. But it also, if we're looking at kind of the physiotherapy aims, then those exercises are working to maintain balance and flexibility, where the aim is to minimize risks of trips and falls into the future. And obviously what we want to do is, for people living with dementia, we want them to be able to retain their independence for as long as possible. And mobility is a massive part of this, obviously, because it means that the potential of living in your own home rather than having to kind of be transferred or volunteer to go into kind of a care home, it becomes, it can maybe, you can stay in your own home for longer. Now, the singing and speech and language therapy workshops, we're looking at the muscles of the mouth, swallowing, breathing, and the diaphragm. And the aim is there to kind of maintain those mouth muscles for as long as possible. You'll see our speech and language therapist talk in a minute about the exercises, but what I have to say is they were the hardest for people in the participation, because the exercises, they just look so strange. You know, you're kind of blowing kisses at people across the room. Well, that's quite nice, and doing all kind of strange exercises with your mouth. But we did find that over the course of time, after about 2 sessions, people just got used to them, and we were really like hearing great things about kind of that part of the intervention. So yeah, beautiful. Megan, next slide, please. So obviously, as I mentioned, you know, in terms of that break in the running of our services, initially it was we had to kind of try and find the best fit of how to still be accessing people in their homes, giving them access to kind of music, giving them access to these exercises. And so we tried quite early on to do different things in the pandemic, in the lockdowns, like ringing care homes and singing down the phone, or kind of hosting Zoom calls, you know, group Zoom calls. But what we found is it was super difficult for people kind of living with dementia to get onto these calls, especially if they were less supported by carers or family members in their home, or if the care home staff didn't have quite the capacity, which at that time it was a bit emergency, you know, so they didn't really have the capacity. So what we did was we kind of pivoted our service, and we made an online series. And you could sign up to this online series, and you still can. The URL to do that is just at the bottom. That's just free, and it runs. And then you get an email delivered to your inbox once every week. And this email is it gives you access to a video, which will either be speech and language or physio. So Megan's just gonna play you like a little kind of part of one of those videos.
Well,
here we go. And point. And point. And sway. And point. And point. And sway. And again.
This dance has a sharp and steady beat, which helps with cue initiation and maintenance of movement. By using verbal prompts such as point, sway, clap, alongside gestures and demonstrations, we can support improved movement control through sensory cueing strategies and action observation. This dance can be completed in many postural sets, such as sitting, standing, or supported standing. It's important to do whatever feels most comfortable for you.
And click.
Oh, woman,
Down low.
I guess if you say
Hands
so,
and clap.
I have to pack my things and go.
And point. And point. Sway. And point. And point.
In this session, we will be looking at the importance of resonance, the quality of the sound we make, and providing exercises to maintain these skills for people. Resonance occurs in the chest, mouth, and nose, and it's important we have a good combination of these for a lovely voice quality. Now we're going to use the and the n sounds, which are the m and the n sounds in a ditty.
my mother's name is Mary, my granny's name is Nancy. Mary and Nancy used to sing me this song.
Great, now your turn.
My mother's name is Mary, my granny's name is Nancy. Mary and Nancy used to sing me this song.
So Megan, maybe we can pause pause that one. I know I'm going to be disappointing everybody because you probably will want to break into Mamma Mia with me, but we probably don't have time in this webinar. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide, please. Thanks for that. So that was kind of just a little clip really of the online series, and then kind of giving you an insight into what we do in the workshops themselves. As you will probably appreciate, for people living with dementia, there are issues around, consent. So videos aren't always possible within the workshops themselves, because we're always quite careful to ask people whether or not they would like to engage with photographs and videos and kind of, like promoting the service. So that's really useful then to kind of be able to show you in this kind of series. So yeah. Since we've been running since 2018, then obviously we have had quite a lot of participant feedback in that time. So this slide really just speaks about kind of more functional feedback, speaking about kind of movement and how people had responded to the question whether or not they found that their movement improved over the course of the session. So this is us asking participants, so that's people living with dementia and carers. So it's either carers reporting on behalf of or people living with dementia themselves. And 91.5% of people said that they found that their movement had improved. Sorry. We also kind of tried to test a little bit, or tried to kind of ask a little bit about sitting and standing, because that's a massive thing, which kind of massive part of mobility, which will make it possible for you to stay in your own home for a lot longer. And 78.7% of people said they found it easier, and I'm not surprised, because we do get people to sit up and to stand up and sit down quite a lot during the sessions. And in general, if people can, and it's safe for them to do so, so we allow for kind of like supported dancing in some cases where people are a little bit frailer, and then just full on dancing in for people who kind of have that mobility. 84.4% said that they found it easier to speak after the sessions as well. We also kind of gathered little quotes from people, and this one up here is just is about the repetition. So because we're doing the same things for 12 weeks at a time, I had mistakenly thought, kind of in my role as project coordinator at the beginning of in 2018, I'd mistakenly thought that perhaps people wouldn't be able to learn anything. But we did see that not only can people have like bodily memory responses, and they can also over time learn the moves of the dancers, so that during the dances the dancer will give one word prompts. So like you saw Layla in the video saying point and sway. And we found that some of the participants in our group who are living with dementia then would take those words and repeat them when they heard, excuse me, when they heard the music coming on, and also were able to then kind of couple those with the movements themselves. Next slide, Megan, please. Yes, and this slide is more to do with mood. And so we saw that kind of people who had taken part in the workshop says that their mood improved. I mean, 99% is pretty high. And so Megan's going to ratify that with her research. 93% of participants said that they looked forward to the sessions, which is something, again, which I was quite surprised about. So we did have people who were living with dementia who didn't really know the names of the workshop leaders. However, they did know that they wanted to come to the session because last week they'd had that feeling that was inclusive, involved, and so they were looking forward to it. This is just one of my favorite quotes that we've gleaned over the years, really, because this comes from one of our participants in a daycare centre who himself was a doctor, and had been, as he told me, kind of promoting music as as beneficial for people living with dementia prior to his own diagnosis. And he said, as the dementia gets worse, I'm bumping into things. It improves your mood, makes you feel more positive. I was jumping in. 9 out of 10. Give praise where it's due. There's not enough praise in this world. And when he said that to me, I had to hold back some tears, I have to say. Next slide, please. So this is just a little section of some participants who come from a group which is called Back to Life in Toxteth. It's run by Jackie Walker, and that group runs every 2 weeks. So it was a little bit different to the way that we run every single week. But we went in over the course of like every 2 weeks then, and it elongated it, so it ended up stretching out over kind of a 8-month or so period, and that was after COVID. So I'm just going to leave the participants to speak. Thanks, Megan.
The things that you teach us are easy to do for my ability. I have problems with my right leg and my left arm, and I have found that the exercises that I'm doing are really easy to follow, and not only that, I can do them at home, which is a great help, because I think you know, with COVID everything stopped, and I used to be busy before then, and when everything stopped I stopped, and my movement was not very good, and my muscles weren't very good. So coming to these sessions have got me to move again, move my legs, exercise my leg, and especially the arm. The arm never got any kind of exercise at all, because there was a lot of damage done to the leg. So the whole body was being worked, but so was my mind, my brain, because it was connecting, you know, I felt happy.
I enjoyed the exercise, the music, the dance. The exercise is good because it helps the body movement, it helps to breathe easy. Well, with me, it helps me to sleep better because I have sleeping problem, so it helps me to sleep a bit better. I know I'll sleep well tonight.
I find it much more enjoyable doing the exercises in a dance sort of way than just sitting there doing exercises.
Yeah.
Makes them happier, merrier, and, you know, more inclusive for me.
Yeah, you know, like they say, action. Many action helps people's memory. You know, like the top hat, the white bow, the bow tie. That really helps them because they don't automatically, you know, do it.
Clear
There'll
that
be
table.
smooth sailing 'cause I'm trimming my sails.
We're going to pick our top hats up.
In my
pop
top
them on,
hat and my
our white ties and our tails. Lovely taps go.
And it gets them involved. It gets them involved with people, which is probably something that they miss when they're not at something like this because of the illness that they've got.
Yeah. She's had a brain operation, and she's had part of the brain taken away, and she's had trouble with a lot of things, but she really makes the effort to come here. And she used to be terrified to get in and out of cabs, but with the system she's able to do that now. She was able to move her legs, sit on the chair in the cab and swing her legs in. She's able to do all that. She's got that confidence now, and it does give them confidence because again, go back to COVID, because they all had issues. They weren't allowed to even mix with each other. They all had to stay in their apartments, their little flats and things. And I think the management was very cautious on keeping them safe, but it did have a knock-on effect to them. And coming here has made the world of difference, because they're not just mixing with each other again, but they're mixing with other people. And the exercises they can follow quite easy, but they know if they're tired, they just stop and watch.
If we run the session again, what do you think we would do differently? What could we do differently?
Do everything all over again.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, so obviously it is a hit, but we could only provide so many in the kind of series over the 5 years to each individual kind of group or like place. But just to speak to that, so we provided Music Makes Us in care homes, in daycare centres and in community centres, and then once or twice we tried in arts galleries and museums as well, just to give a massive, you know, spread to allow for maximum kind of participation. and also to kind of like test and see what works. Megan, if you don't mind, I'm just going to skip to kind of my last slide because I'm just got one little eye on the time. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so as we've kind of gone on, our partnership with the Uni of Liverpool and Clarissa has grown. And so Megan is doing a service evaluation, as she's explained, both kind of with us and then with Lyrics and Lunch. And I'm also doing a little evaluation of what stops people accessing each of those different locations I've just mentioned, or what might kind of make it easier for them to. And that's kind of ongoing, so in partnership. But Megan, I'm going to pass back over to you for the research side because you can explain it way more eloquently than I can. Thanks very much.
Oh no, thank you so much, Kym. And I have to say, it's been an absolute pleasure from my end being able to come to these sessions and be able to get involved with them from the research side of it. And they're so much fun, and it's lovely to just see how much of a smile it puts on people's faces for everyone that goes to them. So yeah. But thank you so much for going through all those sessions and for sharing those videos. So I'm now just going to move on and talk the rest of the time about the research projects that we are working on, and specifically what we wanted to focus on. So previous research has mainly examined singing interventions, have generally focused on, as I was saying previously, the outcomes for people living with dementia rather than their carers. So in our project, this is something that we're wanting to specifically look at outcome measures for both people living with dementia and their carers as well, and evaluate the impact for both groups of people. A lot of previous research as well has been delivered in care home settings rather than in community settings. So this might be daycare centres, and we wanted to look at to see the benefits for people living in the community as well and still living at home, because there might be different benefits depending on which stage of dementia they're at and which setting it's kind of delivered in. And also a lot of previous research has focused on the musical intervention itself and kind of the singing aspect of it. And that's something that we also want to focus on in our research, but we also want to focus on kind of the social aspects as well, as that come with some of these groups, and looking at outcome measures such as whether going to these groups can help reduce feelings of loneliness and reduce feelings of social isolation as well for people living with dementia and their carers as well. So our project aims to evaluate singing and dance support services. We also want to examine the social return and investment of both these services, working with Lyrics and Lunch and the Brain Charity. And we also want to examine barriers to access and engagement with singing support services as well. So we want to specifically look at whether singing interventions have an impact on quality of life, cognitive functioning, mood and levels of agitation, feelings of loneliness and social isolation, feelings of care burden, and specifically for the dance sessions, we want to look at physical frailty, and we want to look at this for both people living with dementia and their carers as well. So the physical frailty measure that we're including in this study takes into account a few different factors. So it will take into account the person's walking speed, their grip strength, whether they have experience weight loss, and also their kind of daily physical activity levels, and that creates a physical frailty index, and we want to see whether attending the dance sessions has an impact on that. So we will be using a mixed methods design to evaluate the music mixers sessions in relation to a range of outcome measures in both people living with dementia and their carers. So I won't go through them because just for time, but if anyone's interested in the specific qualitative measures that we'll be using, they are listed there. And then we'll also be doing a series of semi-structured interviews with people living with dementia, unpaid carers who've been attending the sessions, and then also with service providers and workshop coordinators to kind of see, get an understanding of what they feel works in terms of fostering engagement within the sessions. And then we also want to do interviews with local facilitators. So this will be paid carers, people working in the care home, to be able to capture their impact that they see the sessions have had on people living with dementia. And the interviews will focus on acceptability, accessibility, and also adaptability, and whether they could be moved to kind of online settings like previously, and the kind of benefit to that in terms of accessibility. So I also just want to talk about Lyrics and Lunch, which is the second charity that we have the pleasure of working with. So Lyrics and Lunch is a registered charity based in Lancaster, and they aim to serve people living with dementia and carers living still at home within the community by providing a singing group alongside a nourishing lunch in a sociable environment. So Lyrics and Lunch is a church-based organisation, and they also include a short, optional, reflective spiritual component at the end, but the sessions are open to people of any religion or non. So the charity currently has 6 groups, which are located across England, and the sessions will take place either weekly or bi-weekly and will last approximately 2 hours, with either the first session consisting of a sociable lunch and then an hour of group singing. And that will include kind of percussion instruments, also some dance elements as well. They'll kind of use props or scarves and things like that. And the quite unique thing about this group in particular is that it has a very high focus on kind of fun, sociable, creating a fun and sociable and inclusive environment for everybody who attends. And specifically, it has the additional element alongside the singing that they have a large amount of time to be able to socialise and kind of socialise over lunch as well. So it has a very big social aspect to it. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to have time to show the video, but if people would like to see it, because it's a lovely video, it is available on the Lyrics and Lunch website, so you'll be able to Google that and find the video, and it just explains a little bit in more depth about the sessions. But unfortunately, I think I'm going to run out of time, so I won't be able to include it, but I urge you to go have a look at it, because it's lovely to kind of see some of the feedback and stuff from people who attend and their experiences of going. So again, for this service, we want to look at quality of life, cognitive functioning, and the same outcome measures that we used, that we'll be using to evaluate the brain charity, for both people living with dementia and their carers. And then we are also including a core outcome set. So it's really important when evaluating services that we are using outcome measures that are assessing factors and domains that are specifically important to people living with dementia and their carers. So this particular core outcome set was developed by Riley et al. In 2020, and they came up with 13 domains that, when they were working with people living with dementia, paid and unpaid carers, they essentially asked them, what is the most important things to you, and what outcomes do you want to get from different types of interventions? And these are the factors that they said were most important to them. So we'll be using a bespoke measure, which will evaluate these outcome measures, and that will be included in the Lyrics and Lunch evaluation too. And then it's also really important to quantify the value of these singing interventions, not just in terms of economic terms, but in terms of social value. So for both services, we will be doing a social return on investment to be able to capture the social impact that these sessions have. So what a social return on investment does, it essentially takes the outcome measures, which will be used from the questionnaires and the interviews, and you attribute a cost to each of the outcomes from kind of registered databases that do social return on investment, things like that. And it'll come up with a ratio. So essentially what it does is it means that, so for a social return on investment ratio of £3.50, it means that to £1, it means that for every £1 that is invested, there's a £3.50 of social value created. So that is something that we'll be doing for both of these services. So unfortunately, I don't have any results to share with you today, but we are in full swing of the evaluation with both charities, and we're hoping that we will have data collection finished in around February for the Brain charity and April for Lyrics and Lunch. So we will have results to share later in the year, so please let me know if you would like to be notified when the results are available, and I can get them sent over to you and things like that. So there we go. And just quickly, in terms of the practical predicted implications and impact of this research, we're hoping that it will highlight the importance and impact of singing support service for people living with dementia, and highlight the need and benefit for community support groups for both people living with dementia and their carers. We're hoping that it'll provide insight into the social return on investment of these singing support services too. And we're hoping that by understanding the experiences of people attending these services, it'll help them make the sessions even better, even more accessible, and even more wide-reaching as well. So thank you very much for listening. And we're going to open up to any questions that people might have.
Great, thank you so much, both Megan and Kym. Fantastic. I mean, I've worked with you for a number of years, but I still like to hear about, and those videos are fab. I did want to sing along to ABBA, so not very happy there. Need to listen to it tonight. Yes, it's open to questions now. Fantastic talk. Just to say, I think Megan has undersold herself a little bit because she has been really busy collecting the data. So whilst you don't have any evidence to showcase just yet, you have done a lot of pre and post surveys with people and questionnaires, and you've spoken to them in interviews, so you will have a lot of data to share soon. So well done. So please feel free to pose any questions here. So we've got a couple already. Maybe more of a general question, maybe one for Kym even. Is it possible that music support can be done on a daily basis for people living with dementia?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. It's a really good one. I'll answer it from kind of two different directions. And the answer is yes. but the two different directions are, so in a kind of on a research, from a research standpoint, there's different ways of kind of introducing music into the daily life. So one is kind of like passive music, where you've got the radio on and people are kind of like humming along in the background, or maybe you're watching musicals on television together. And then there's kind of more active, where people are getting engaged because the music fundamentally is being used as a communication tool, and that is way more useful when it's activated. There's also been some research around, but it's inconclusive, about playing music. So that's like another level on top, isn't it? So yeah, in general, music is when speech perhaps is no longer possible, music is still possible, and singing and kind of yeah, like singing along to lyrics, humming along to the lyrics. You'd be really surprised that some people who are living with dementia can still do that when they can't actually articulate anymore. So please introduce music. It doesn't matter which form it comes in, the more the merrier, actually.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so and there's a question from Brian E. About any future plans of carrying this on, and I think maybe to bring out again, the Brain Charity has been awarded funding to host these workshops, regardless of any research involvement. So we worked with the Brain Charity after they've launched it and started evaluating this. Then there was a bit of a stop during the pandemic, and then Megan picked it up again. So it wasn't a research initiated project, but really a charity initiated project, which is fantastic. However, Kym, do you want to share a bit about any future plans, perhaps?
Yeah, so we're trying very hard to find more funding to kind of continue, because as you've seen, like across the board, it just seems like people engage in the service. It really kind of offers something which is fairly innovative, and across the kind of board people engage, so that's great. Yeah, we're underway. I'd say we've got our kind of funding writer is always looking around for bids, and we have tried to put some more in as well, kind of in collaboration, and yeah, with Clarissa and Megan, and then also separately. So we're on the lookout, but it's, as you'll know, the sector's there's not so much money around at the moment, so we are very hopeful, and we continue to be hopeful. And the thing is that online service, it exists and it's free and you can use it. So if you have contacts within a care home for activities coordinators, please tell them to just email and get all of that toolkit, and then kind of they can run that session for themselves, either by putting a video up or by kind of learning the dance moves themselves, or you can do it with your loved ones at home, as we've had many different kind of carers do, especially during COVID, but then actually post-COVID as well. So yeah, there is some hope out there, and let's try and find funding.
And in relation to, there's a question from Kate, in relation to the instruments, etc., and musicians, do you link up with local musicians for your groups?
Yeah. So yes, so we didn't have kind of live music. We did it in a different way, which is kind of, we had a professional singer who would kind of who sings in the room to kind of a backing track, but because we have karaoke, so that everybody, even if they can't remember the lyrics necessarily, or for carers who don't know the lyrics, then they can kind of sing along. And then for the kind of dance, we had professional dancers in the room as well as the physio. So yeah, but we did work with musicians, an organisation called Music in Mind, who actually composed new tracks for us. So yes, and then we inserted those into the sessions, and people learnt them, brand new tracks that you wouldn't have imagined. But yeah.
Great. And we've just had a question from Kate Evans about where they can find this toolkit you just mentioned, Kym. I suppose it's just on the Brain Charity webpage, isn't it?
So if you go to the Brain Charity, it will say kind of get help, and then there's a drop down, and it says dementia services. And if you go to that page, then you can sign up to the email and you'll just start receiving it. Or alternatively, if you email Kym at thebraincharity.org.uk, then I can just point you in the right direction as well.
Great. One final question from Jockstender. How often do family members accompany their relatives at the music events? Both for Megan and Kym, because Megan, you've been to a lot of those as well, haven't you?
I was just about to say, because in the last kind of 3 months, Megan's been to way more of the sessions than I've been able to go to. So Megan, maybe you could.
Yeah, so it'll vary really in terms of how many times family members will come, and I think it does, depending on like the time of the session and just kind of like their feasibility to be able to engage with them. But yeah, I think for day centres, we'll sometimes have carers and family members and things accompany loved ones, and it's really lovely to see kind of them being able to engage with the sessions as well. And then also again for people living in care homes or residents as well, we will often have carers and family members and things like that join in for the sessions as well. So yeah, not necessarily all the time will they be join for the sessions, just in terms of the feasibility of them being able to attend. But yeah, they do come occasionally, and it is lovely when they're able to engage with them. For lyrics and lunch, they specifically do need a family member or carer or relative to come with them to the service. That is something that lyrics and lunch will ask for people to do. So for that one, it will be all the time, but for Brain Charity, not necessarily all the time.
Great. So I see more questions popping in, but I'm mindful of time that people have to go. But you can contact Megan and Kym as well, social media or emails. And Kym just shared her email, and we will be uploading this. I'm just mindful of sharing 2 slides now. Would you mind stopping sharing, Megan, please? And then I'll just share 2 slides to just share with you what we will be hearing about next time. So in the March webinar, which will take place on the 26th, yeah, pretty sure, from 11 till 12, we will focus on Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia, and what does hearing loss have to do with it. So we will have a fellow from Megan, who is sitting next to her in the office, actually, Dr. Megan Reedman, and she's currently doing a postdoctoral fellowship, also from the NIHR and the Alzheimer's Society, looking specifically at this. So she will share a bit about her work and research in the field, but we will also be joined by a practicing lead Admiral nurse, Mark Oakley, who is also an ambassador for the Lewy Body Society. So please join us, because it'll be a nice mix of academic and allied health professional again. That will be the next webinar. I've also shared the Eventbrite link in the chat if you want to sign up. And lastly, We are really keen on hearing everyone's thoughts about the Liverpool Dementia and Aging Research Forum. So we have started an evaluation end of last year, and we're running this now because we want to hear about your experiences of engaging with the forum. What have you learned? What else would you like to hear? Has it been educative? Have you made new connections, etc.? So we're inviting you to take part in a one-off remote interview with one of our researchers, not myself, but some other people. If you are interested, please do contact one of our researchers, Dr. James Watson. The email is there. It's really good for us to hear from you what you think about what we're doing. Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing now. And I think we're all done. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Megan and Kym, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Bye, everyone.